Welcome into Touchdown Talk. Bird brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen alike. Lindy End Zone in the building for the touchdown, taking the lead for the Philadelphia Eagles. One video at a time, or as is for this evening, one stream at a time. And introducing to the panel for the first time on Touchdown Talk, as I always try to bring different guests on with every episode. None other than this time for Philly the podcast, Joe Castro to my right, and Shakey B makes his appearance as well. The two of them coming together for this clash of Eagles conversation. Gentlemen, it has been a long time coming with you two specifically. But ever since the beginning of my channel and just the amount of, confidence somebody can instill in someone else to keep their channel going. And, there's a little bit of a sentimental value there between Castro and I, and me dropping my first video on this thing almost 2 years ago and keeping my channel going strong. And, it's about time that I had these two on the channel, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity and for you guys to take the time out to talk some birds. So Castro B, how y'all doing this evening?
Living the dream, man. I'm all hyped up off coffee. I don't know about Brandon, but I'm happy. I'm hyped.
Nah, I had my last coffee maybe a couple of hours ago. I did have two today. So I'm feeling good. So I'm good until my crash about 9 o'clock.
That works perfectly for the time window of the stream. If it's gonna be starting at 7 here, and I wanted to make sure that I had the two of you in here, and you just give that little bit of time and whatnot. But we got quite a bit to go over. But in terms of how I want to break this down, and I know, people have talked about this, this draft that the Eagles were able to do, and it seems like they were in a 2-for-2 type of situation when you take last year's draft class and this year's draft class and combine them. I always had a positive thought on last year's draft class, to the fact that a lot of the players that were selected did at some point play some meaningful football throughout the season. Now, granted, they got dropped down into the practice squad at times and positional changes and what have you, but to go from last year to this year, and what Howie Roseman was able to do to go back to back and really take that next step in establishing a higher foundation to this football team. It's speaking a little bit of a higher volume to how he's been able to address key positions, especially with the amount of coaching and personnel changes that have happened for the last couple of years. And starting with Castro here, I know you've been dropping I know there was quite a few videos that you have dropped leading up to this draft, and analyzing from a point in time on where Howie Roseman is as a general manager, especially in terms of talent evaluation, and him having a little bit of arrogance at times and not necessarily following the board, but it was not just the players that he wanted, and it was also the players that Jeffrey Lurie wanted. So him singling out the scouting department and everybody else that he should be listening to and not paying attention to them just to appease the owner. But this year, that didn't seem to be the case, because everyone was on the same page miraculously, and it turned out to be a pretty fantastic result on paper.
Yeah, I like this draft. I love this draft. I love what Howie was able to do. I love what the team was able to do. I also do feel like the Eagles weren't in a, I don't want to say can't miss situation, right? You still got to make the layup. I think is a good analogy. A lot of people are saying you still have to make that easy shot, take that easy shot. But you had so many draft picks, and I think you had so much more knowledge than you do in different types of drafts. You look at that COVID year, you look at a lot of super seniors in this draft. So you have a little bit more film, a little bit more information on some of these guys. You look at the NIL deals. You look at I think I'm saying it. It's either NIL or NILI. You know what I'm talking about. You look at these college kids being able to get sponsors and get paid that's another avenue. You know, we had Jeremy Green of ESPN on the show, and he was saying that they sponsored a couple kids. I believe one of them was Nakobe Dean, if I'm not mistaken. I got to go back and remember. But either way, he said that people were reaching out to him and his team because they wanted to see how these young men worked with these companies. So you're getting so much more information than you usually do. So I do feel like the Philadelphia Eagles were in a position, knowing that they wanted to get their wide receiver, which they did in AJ Brown, to then say, let's make the best play with the rest of our draft picks. Because if you look at the first round pick, I think that everybody loves that. Jordan Davis. Maybe we gave up a little bit much, but I do love the pick. Obviously, AJ Brown is a home run trade. I don't think we gave up too much there. And then you look at the second round, Cam Jurgens is a question. Cam Jurgens is a good player. People always love to tell me when they come on the show, he's very highly rated. So we'll see what happens there, but it's still a question mark. There were still other holes that the Eagles had there. And then you look at the third round, Nakobe Dean. What can I say there? Really, like realistically, what can I say there? But if you look at these fifth round picks, we went from 10 picks to 5. I can say with confidence that I like 2 of them. The other 3 are question marks. So on the surface, I say all that to say this. On the surface, I think it was a very sexy draft. It had high end potential. But I don't think that he's totally out of the well. I don't think that he's totally out of, the public's eye, or at least he shouldn't be. You know what I'm saying? I think that we gave up a lot to get what we got. So I love what we got. Don't get me wrong, but I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, Howie turned everything around. He's a totally different person. I still got to see some things happen because a lot of these guys are leaving now, right? These scouts are leaving and some things happen. Yeah. No matter how much you want to shake it up and say it might not be Howie, it might also be. So I don't know. I like it, but I also think we got to be as fans a little vigilant, and a little bit. Yeah, let's hold off on giving Howie an invite to the barbecue just yet, even though I know I did on Twitter, but
the invite was already sent. How are you going to take it back?
I take it back.
No, but Lindy, I think you were right when you mentioned you have to look at the last 2 seasons, right? You have to look at last draft as well. And realistically, our rebuild started last year when we hit the draft. We hit the draft running. We all questioned him when he traded early with the Dolphins. We were like, why would you trade? We had the 6th pick. Like, we can get anybody at that spot. Why are we trading? And then we end up with Devontae Smith anyways, thanks to the Cowboys. That's like the only thank you they'll ever get. And then we get a guy like Landon Dickerson who played quality snaps. The guy became a starter, someone that we were like, not ACL guy. Why are you reaching on this guy? Like, what's going on? But he ended up being a valuable dude. And then, even in like a guy like Kenny Gainwell, I think they overused him, but they used him. That was so at least he was used and he played. And Milton Williams, he's developing, and you've seen sparks from him. And then you fast forward to this draft. This draft was great. There's no way around it. Everyone between NFL analysts there's nothing to question this draft. And that was the beauty of it. There was nothing that we could sit back and be like, why did he do that? Why did he do this? Grabbing Cam Jurgens in the second. Yeah, it was like a safe pick in a sense. But the fact that we got Nakobe Dean in the third, it's like if we flip-flopped it. It was like we got Nakobe Dean in the second round, we grabbed Cam Jurgens in the third. And that's the way I look at it. It was just a great draft overall. Obviously, we, like Castro said, we can't just all give Howie his flowers. You can congratulate him. We can praise the positives, right? Because we don't need to just be down and out Eagles fans where everyone's like, you guys always complain about everything. We can be happy for him. We can applaud him for what he's done. But it's going to happen, like what's going to look like. I don't want to look too far in the future, but let's say Hurts isn't that dude. What are we going to do there? Are we going to take the obvious quarterback that looks good in the draft, or are you going to reach for someone from a division that is just like these guys play against like D3 players? Are we going to get a quarterback like that? So that's where I feel like Howie's real test is going to come. I think now it's not down to like Nick Sirianni and see what we're going to do with all these pieces in play. So it's kind of like Howie kind of takes the back burner. We see what he does. Regarding like maybe trying to shore up that corner 2 spot, maybe a safety over the summer or whatever. Yeah. But for now, it's like how he did his thing. And for that, from the last 2 drafts, I'm happy about it right now.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's a lot of dots that we can connect here, especially when you consider last year's draft class and combining that with how buddy Howie is starting to look, with the head coach and some of the other coaching personnel groups. You see how close Howie seems to be with Nick Sirianni, and the relationship that they're developing. And we were thinking to ourselves for the last couple of years or so, well, why isn't that the same? Why isn't it the same with Doug Peterson? And you going into this year, there was a feeling of more of a collaborative effort with the players that they wanted, or the players that they wanted to reach for going into this class. And when you start to connect from last year's to this year's, that first round selection, they almost had to grab that player. They almost had to grab Jordan Davis. They almost had to grab Devontae Smith at that point in time. You get to round two, both players in the second round. Now, granted, the Eagles had I think, no, the Eagles only had one second round selection because Milton Williams, I believe, was a third, if I'm thinking correctly off the top of my head. But you guys get where I'm going with this. So it's the second round selections were two questionable offensive linemen for two different circumstances. Landon Dickerson was because of the injury concerns with two ACL tears in both of his knees, and then you look at Cam Jurgens, where he was like, okay, this isn't the sexiest pick at this point in time, especially when the team was still in need of a corner. They were still in need of it, and still in need of a safety. We're wondering where the hell the linebacker was at that point in time, and you're taking a center. Well, wait a minute. You look back at it for a second and think, well, okay, Kelsey's only going to be back for 1 year. And then the dominoes continue to fall when you hear Jason Kelsey live. I forget what the show was, but he was really excited. He was pumped up that Cam was selected, and talking about how he handpicked him after the evaluations of the last few years. This was his guy. He preferred him over Tyler Lindenbaum, especially in this last class, with a lot of other NFL execs and scouting departments actually taking Jurgens over Lindenbaum. But I think we got to break this down. A little bit better, though. So we look into the first, and we look at the situation that the Eagles had. They were sitting at 15, and we realized from this last season's result and how much of an impact losing Brandon Graham was in terms of run defense, because as soon as he was gone from that Achilles, it was just absolutely putrid. So them understanding that them selecting at 15, the Ravens always prioritize defense, no matter what position they are in. If they know that they can get a transcendent type of guy that is going to take their defense to the next level, wherever it is on that side of the ball, they're going to do it. So Jordan Davis was one of the Eagles' top 30 visits, and they weren't going to miss out on this guy because we've known for how many years now that, under the philosophy of Andy Reid that Howie Roseman has learned, he prioritizes from the trenches out. So being that Fletcher Cox seems to be on borrowed time on this football team and giving him $14 million for 1 year, that's another conversation in itself. But they almost had to take Jordan Davis with whatever it took, whatever extra assets they had to jump the Ravens. They had to take him. And when you look at his skill set and what he was able to do for the Georgia Bulldogs with 4 other individuals, a total of 5 that went in this class, how he still was able to stand out with the athletic profile and just the sheer power that he possessed to be able to hold the position on the line and actually contain two offensive linemen at one time. What that means for a run defense is almost second to none. And when you look at where the Eagles were at that point in time, losing Brandon Graham, this was a no-brainer for them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that it was like a very poorly kept secret. I won't say worst kept secret because I think that belongs to Eagles and about everything we do. But it was a very poorly kept secret that the Ravens wanted Jordan Davis, and I think that. Look, I love Jordan Davis. Don't get me wrong. You know, low end, he's going to be he might be a generational run stopper. I think that realistically might be his low end. You know, high end, if he can become a real, you know, consistent and somebody that you can put out there 3 downs and he can be a consistent pass rusher for you, sky's the limit. Jordan Davis is a freak. And one thing I will say is that I think that the way it depends on how you look at this draft, right? Because if you look at the top 32 that went, the Cowboys, their draft board kind of fell or leaked, I should say, and they had 15 first round grades, right? When I spoke to PFF guys multiple times, they kept telling me they had like 25, 30 people in that first round grade. And the way I looked at that, the way I took that is that a lot of teams in this draft, once you got out of number 15, 14, they started saying, I'd rather be safe and just get this guy in the second round. So I feel like the Philadelphia Eagles sat there and said, while we love Kyle Hamilton, and maybe this is me just trying to talk myself out of Kyle Hamilton, but I think that what they were saying to themselves is, while we love Kyle Hamilton, we feel we can fix this position in the free agency market and or next year. We feel, because we have about 10 different defensive backs that are under like 25, 26, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't think I'm exaggerating that number. Obviously, I'm kind of going off the top of my head. But either way, we have a lot of young guys in that secondary that can fight for that position. You can't really say the same about the defensive line. And this is something that I think me and Brandon talked about, and, you know, to end last year, that, you know, that was probably one of our biggest concerns, even going into last draft, is that you have an old defensive line, and that's kind of your marquee. So I can see, kind of like you were saying, why the Philadelphia Eagles would say this is our guy over a Kyle Hamilton, even though I wanted Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton because I felt like he was one of those, and I feel like the last can't miss guy. I loved George Karlaftis, but I understood the knocks on him. So, you know, I loved our pick, but there's both, you know, there's two ways of looking at it, but I loved our pick and I understood what they do. And who knows, it might go twofolds. And now that they had to take Kyle Hamilton, the Baltimore Ravens might have to give up Chuck Clark. The Eagles might eat off of that. So he might have, you know what I'm saying? He might have put an extra roll on somebody else's plate to make sure they didn't come and get seconds, right? You know, so it might be a nice thing that works out for both of us. So that's what I'm hoping for, but I do get it. But Jordan Davis is a dog, so I'm excited to see that man.
Yeah, I mean, what more do the Ravens need now outside of Kyle Hamilton and Marcus Williams, other than special teams bodies? You know what I mean? That's just ridiculous to have a tandem like that. But you know, and man, and it just threw me off of conversation. What I was about to say. You know, throwing this over to B here, but in watching and. What was I going to say here? I can't remember, but yeah, no, it was just going to further just talk about the idea of Jordan Davis and you know, the overall meaning of this, the overall meaning of the selection, and understanding like what his future role is going to be. Now they understand, and when you connect the dots here a little bit more, part of that reasoning is that, you know, Tracy Rocker was one of his previous recruits at the collegiate level. You know, Jordan was a former basketball player, so he has quite the athletic profile coming out of high school playing basketball. Yeah, he was a basketball player in high school. You know, at that size.
Yeah,
so,
that's true. That's true.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense, but you know, it's not the first time the Eagles have selected a multi athlete. You know, going from basketball to football. Arcega-Whiteside was one, and granted, I know that's a sensitive name right now, but it's the only.
Don't let Brandon get off of that. That's Brandon's.
That's my homie, man.
He acted like it was nothing.
I know. I was about to say that's Shakey's guy.
That was the layup.
My boy now is Reagan. I know this is Matt Random, but like since I just threw Brandon under the bus, I think I should throw myself under there with him. This year, I'm blindly having faith in Rager. There's no explanation. There's no reasoning why. I'm just gonna blindly. I feel like we all deserve that. Everybody's hating Rager, I just feel like I'm gonna be that one guy that says he can do something until he gets traded, at least until he gets traded.
But you know what? But actually, that laugh actually brought me back in the right direction. What I was going to, how I was going to, defer this to be, and and where the Jordan Davis selection makes even more sense is, what Howie Roseman was thinking here to me is that, and watching Kyle Hamilton going to Baltimore and being okay with it, my whole thought process on that was, okay, well, we know that we're short at corner and safety, and we understand that. But if we can address and start with the first level first, then the second and the third level of our defense would be a little bit better off, because you have a little more stability and you have a little more of an edge when you're starting at that first level, and you got a guy like Jordan Davis that can split the A and the B gap. So maybe you can start blitzing the linebackers and penetrate through the offensive line and give them a clear cut B line to the quarterback, and have those kinds of opportunities that will open Jonathan Gannon's defense a little bit more, barring that he now has some better personnel to carry out these responsibilities.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick to touch upon just the idea of what happened to like Doug Peterson and Howie. In my opinion, I think it became an ego thing. I think when they win the Super Bowl, then it became a battle of who was the reason we won the Super Bowl. I'm sure they had battles, and you got to remember, Doug Peterson's an ex-NFL player, so you know that ego. And not even that, he was an ex-quarterback, and quarterbacks all have egos. They all want to be the man, and I'm sure at some point their heads just collided, and it was just a wrap at that point.
Yeah.
So, and then with Jordan Davis, I mean, we even saw it a couple seasons ago where Fletcher, we were playing, I believe it was against the Cowboys, and Fletcher went out of the game. He got hurt or whatever, and we couldn't stop anything at that point. Like, it just looked like a completely different defense, and it was sad to see. And even last year in the beginning of the season, everyone's fresh. Fletcher was taking double teams, and Hargrave was having a hell of a season in the beginning of the year. This guy was getting sacks in like every game in the beginning, and then all of a sudden, as the season progressed, you kind of saw that slow down. And I believe that's probably because Fletch himself was probably getting tired and everything like that, and wasn't able to hold the two players, the double blocks, and Hargrave wasn't able to go ahead and have that killer season that we all thought it was going to the trajectory was going to be crazy. But getting Jordan Davis, now you get a body. Now you get a body that can learn from both Fletch and Hargrave, a body that can be that guy, because obviously he's not going to start this year. This year he's not going to start, but you should expect, I would hope that he's expected to be heavy in rotation, where Fletch is going to get those breaks. Fletch is not going to be used the whole game. Yeah, it's going to sound expensive to pay a guy that is going to need as much breaks as probably Fletch is going to need this year, being a little older. But, I mean, that's kind of like you're also paying, I'm assuming, for a valuable teaching moment as well, because once he's gone, then it's going to be Hargrave and Jordan Davis, and that's going to be, I mean, that you're hoping that that's the future. And that, yeah, you're right. Because even the Super Bowl year, when we won the Super Bowl, it wasn't because our D-backs were phenomenal. It wasn't because Jalen Mills wasn't getting burnt on double moves. It's because our front seven was killing it. The quarterback didn't have time to stand in the pocket and tear us up and just pinpoint every single throw. So if we stir up the front seven, like you said, having a guy like Jordan Davis, who's bigger than Fletcher Cox, eat up some blocks, and then you get a guy like who we signed, Hassan Reddick or a N'Kobe Dean, one of these guys coming off the edge, blitzing up the middle. It's only going to benefit our defensive backs. And with that, you're hoping that maybe Wallace can develop. Maybe he can become something, because not every player that comes out of the draft is going to be this killer player that's going to be deemed as the next Brian Dawkins or something. Some guys need time to develop and need that extra support up front, and hoping that if we don't get like a Chuck Clark or something, that Wallace can develop to be that guy. And it only helps if we're able to get pressure on the quarterbacks. Because if we can't get pressure, this is going to be a long season. We even saw when we played the Vikings a couple seasons ago, Kirk Cousins looked like a god. He looked like Peyton Manning's era when he played against us. And that's what I'm worried about, is playing week 2 primetime game. Is like, if we can't get pressure, and playing Detroit's a good warm-up. I say that. Playing Detroit's a good warm-up. But if we can't get pressure, that's going to be – we're going to see at prime time. That's going to be a long season.
Yeah, no, I mean, you think about it, when you break down the front seven and understand that if the D line isn't doing its job, then you're going to be strapped to a limitation where you're not going to have the chance to blitz the linebackers because you're not creating pressure, you're not creating any gaps for them to go through. You're not providing an opportunity to send the hounds, so to speak. Like, we've seen when it was BG and Fletcher Cox when they were getting home, and you're sending the big dogs home. Those guys are getting home, but when they're not, now you're leaving the linebackers in a spot where they have to be in coverage a little bit longer than necessary, and with them being distracted and the quarterback being able to sit in the pocket for an extended period of time, now he can start to pick a defense apart because defenses aren't supposed to stay in coverage for that long, and we have seen that with our offense against, in the past. We've seen our offense do that to other defenses that weren't as well equipped, and we were able to do the same thing to them. So knowing that where they were going with this Jordan Davis pick, that's, it's going to help. Jonathan Gannon, especially in some of his 5-2 fronts, and you have those stacked backers just waiting behind those big guys in the trenches, waiting for them to open up an opportunity to split one of the gaps and go after the quarterback. That's just the biggest. That's just the biggest green light that's popping off to you. They're like, wait a minute, okay, there's a lot of sense to be had here. But I'm thinking at the same time, don't be surprised if Howie Roseman ends up trying to be a shrewd operator in the terms of maybe Jordan Davis's development goes a lot further along than they have expected. He's starting to pick up snaps, at least. You want him around, I would think, 30 to 40 snaps. The 40 point would be a pretty good number. And, if Cox happens to not be as dependent upon, and Jordan Davis starts to take that role, maybe with Cox being on a 1-year deal, that Howie could very well try and get value from, understanding that D linemen are a premium in this league, and it's not like they grow on trees like running backs or receivers or any other expendable position for how valuable the trenches are for the offense and defensive line. But Needless to say, that's just me. Don't be surprised. What is up, Jock Talk? I understood. He's like, who is hosting this? Your guys hosting this. This is Touchdown Talk, episode 14 with Philly the podcast. Thought I'd give you all a quick reminder as we're already 30 minutes into this presentation, and you guys already know the deal by now. Make sure everybody heads over to Castro's channel over there and give him the necessary support that he so willing deserves. But let's keep this going so it doesn't drag on any further. We get to the second round, the Cam Jurgens selection comes aboard. Okay, he is handpicked by Jason Kelce, another Jason Kelce type of center. He's got the profile, former tight end, converted to the offensive lineman position. He ends up playing center. He's got a very good athletic profile for the spot. He still has some cleaning up to do. But where I start to connect more of these dots here, if you think about it, you realize what Cam's weaknesses are at this point in time. He has a problem at the point of attack. He has a problem of being able to contain the pressure that's put upon him. Okay, well, who is a master of that coming out of the collegiate level, that two rookies can work together in training camp to bolster each other up? Jordan Davis is the perfect candidate for that, for these two to work together in that regard, especially considering that you're going to have Jason Kelce as your number one center. You're going to use him as much as you possibly can for, just to not have any kind of disruptions in terms of consistency and everything else. But if you're going to eventually move on from Kelce, and this is the last year that he's going to give you, well, aside from Stoutland working with Cam, aside from Kelsey working with him, and and all of the other veterans in that group, when you have the offense versus the defense, that's where 2 and 2 come together. When you can pair Jordan Davis with Cam Jurgens, and iron starts to sharpen iron, maybe that pick starts to look a little bit better because you have the personnel coming out of the same level with him, to improve his game.
Yeah, I mean, to play devil's advocate, you could say the same thing in the opposite, because if iron sharpening iron, we probably could have waited to like the 4th round, 5th round, and got a guy that working with Stoutland. I like the pick. I mean, I think it's one of those picks that you just gotta be like, it's whatever. It's not sexy, you know what I'm saying? But they have their idea of what they want to do with this guy. So be it. That's cool. If they if they really love this guy, I want to get as much as we can out of Stoutland right now. So if this is a ploy to do that, or a play to do that, then that's cool. You really like this guy. Like I said, a lot of people keep on telling me that he was very highly rated. I believe him. You know what I'm saying? When I watch his tape, I don't see anything crazy, but I'm not an offensive lineman. So it's really hard for me to sit here and say, you know what I'm saying? Oh, he looks crazy. He looks generational. He looks good. He looks good against the competition that he played against. I see the obvious, lack of size. I see the obvious, I don't want to say lack of strength, but he needs to get stronger, especially at the NFL level. And there's athleticism there. I see why Jason Kelsey says he's like him. You know what I'm saying? But I also see the negatives. So we'll see what happens. I really personally, and this is the curse of being an Eagles fan, I just say give guys to Stoutland and let him do his work. I have all faith in him. If Stoutland says that he loves this guy, like Spadero came on the show and he was saying that Stoutland was like raving and gushing about this guy after they drafted him at the, they were talking in their interview or whatever. And that's all I need to hear. If Stoutland's cool with it, I'm cool with it. Like, I'm not going to pretend I know how to, be a mechanic. If my mechanic says it's cool, I'm cool with it. So I think that if Stoutland loved the kid, I'm cool with it. That's all we really need to hear. If he plays left guard, he plays left guard or right guard, whatever. If he waits and red shirts and plays center next year, only better. Like, this offensive line, we've been blessed and we've been spoiled to a certain extent with great offensive line play. You go before, Jason Peters. Trey Thomas, you're thinking, right? Trey Thomas was right before him, if I'm not mistaken. So we've had like a good 20 years of just good offensive line play. And you can go down the line of good offensive linemen. So, it might sound like a cop-out, but there's not much I need to really look into. As long as Stoutland is cool with it, I'm cool with it. That's really how I feel.
Well, I mean, when you're, when you're considering, well, all bias aside, well, there is no bias because we think it's 100% true that Jeff Stoutland's the best offensive line coach in all of football.
Easy.
When you put it into that perspective, it doesn't it almost doesn't matter who is selected at whatever round. I mean, he's taught you that with Jordan Mailata. He's taught you that with Jason Kelsey himself as a 6th round pick. There's plenty of examples from Stoutland's career and just him being able to develop offensive linemen in terms of skill, in terms of versatility. Now, well, one of those outliers right now is Andre Dillard, but that's not the here nor there. Let us hope that in terms of versatility, Cam has a little more capability in that, as opposed to a guy like Andre Dillard, who's very limited to the tackle position, more so the left and the right. And I think part of the 2019 season ruined that a little bit due to injury and in inserting him a little too soon in that Dallas game. And I think it was the Dallas game and the Seattle game, which really ruined him a little bit. But he's bulking up. He's taking it a little bit more seriously. So, we'll see where he ends up. But the idea of when I bring Jordan Davis into the conversation and understanding that he's not necessarily a pass rusher, but what he's able to do is he's able to contain the line. So when I put him and Cam Jurgens in the same sentence, I'm thinking, okay, well, if one of Cam's issues is his struggles at the point of the tack, and when I bring that in, and when I bring that into perspective, I'm thinking, well, all right, I want to know how his communication is with lineman shifts, where the guards are going to tackle to pull to which direction, so those gaps, especially through the A and the B, stay closed. And being that Jordan Davis was very prolific for doing that in college for Georgia, that's where I'm hoping for the iron sharpens iron type of mentality. So with that, I mean, I don't know, B. I don't know if you can make any much more sense of the pick, especially when you already got the blessing from our Lord and Center, Jason Kelsey.
No, I mean,
I
facts.
thought that was a good pun, but yeah.
But you okay over there?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, if you look at our offensive line, you see the athleticism. The one thing you can't coach is athleticism, right? Jordan Mailata, ex-rugby player, Lane Johnson, ex-quarterback. Like, you got guys that can move, and fortunately enough, we do have one of the best, if not the best, offensive line coach in the league to go ahead and coach those areas that may be of need. But you can't coach athleticism, and the fact that they're getting a guy that, like Joe said, Stoutland was raving about, then that's all we can do is be happy about the pick. And outside of just Jordan Davis sharpening iron, he has the blessing of still having to go up against like a Fletcher Cox, a Brandon Graham who likes to help out the young guys that a Milton Williams who's still proven himself and is going to go hard in practice as well. So you got guys that you're going to go up against that it's going to be probably the harder players than you went against in college. So that's only going to make it better for him. And if he, like Joe said, has a redshirt a year, then so be it. I mean, at the end of the day, we know that our older guys, we've known for the last 2 years that our older guys were going to be gone sooner or later, and we're going to have to get younger. We're going to have to get guys to replace these players. And I mean, I'm glad Jordan Kelsey. I'm glad Jason Kelsey was able to put his opinion in it. And I just don't want to put too much pressure on the kid that he has to be the next Jason Kelsey. Fortunately for us, Jason Kelsey became one of Philadelphia's athletes of forever. Like, this guy's gonna be loved in Philadelphia forever. Mm-hmm. And I don't want that pressure of, dang, Kelsey's out of here. Now I got to go ahead and be him, because he doesn't have to be him. And so, I mean, it's great that you get to look to the left of you and see a guy like Jordan Mailata, who never played the game and was able to be coached under Stoutland and really develop into a guy that signed an extension, not just some basic extension. Like, he signed for good money. So you figure that's a confidence boost. And I mean, with Andre Dillard, I know people want him to be traded or whatnot. He might be trade bait throughout the season. Who knows? But from our record, we've seen that we do need backup off. We need depth on the offensive line. As great as it is that we have a coach, we have some weird curse that we've had to cycle through these guys the last couple of years. And the only reason why we had such a bad offensive line at one point a couple of seasons ago is, unfortunately, we went through all the players. Like, we went through the backups to the backups that were playing decent enough to stand on their own, and then they were out for whatever reason. Then we had to go into guys that were working at Arby's and fixing their arm sleeves during the middle of like a play. Like,
Jamon Brown.
So
he popped up on my Instagram the other day. I'm sorry, I'll be the country. He popped up on my Instagram. He's doing workouts, trying to talk about, I'm going back to the NFL. Don't nobody want you, man.
So, I mean, like Joe said, we've been blessed with a great offensive line throughout the last 20 years, and just getting a guy that's going to be that people are excited about and can see the potential in him. Then I mean, we can't complain about it. Yeah, it's not the sexiest of picks, but hey, if it's going to make sure that Jalen Hurts or whoever's going to be our quarterback can play the best that they can play, then we need the guy that's going to be the quarterback of the offensive line.
14 lineups in 16 games. let us hope and pray that doesn't happen again. Oh, Lord have mercy. But I didn't avoid the veterans on purpose in talking about Cam Jurgens. I think it was more of a means of just extra validity when you combine the first and the second round pick on how they are able to improve each other's strengths and work on their weaknesses, and really extend on the definition on how this draft was finalized, and understanding that, well, we lost half of our picks and we only selected 5 out of 10. But when you boil it down, quality is always better than quantity, especially at key positions of a football team to where you're trying to address them. And that's where, and I think that's where the trend seemed to have continued from Jordan Davis to Cam Jurgens. Yes, it was, when you took that pick on the surface, it's like, well, all right, well, okay, corner's still hurting, safety's still hurting, linebacker hasn't been taken yet, but we know this team too darn well to understand that they always prioritize the trenches first. And if they have the opportunity to knock both of them out, especially with high value picks at the same time, they're going to do it whether we like it or not. But in the end, as we would finish up this stream and put a bow on it, when it's all said and done, we're gonna start to say that, yeah, granted, this draft looks great on the surface, but it's gonna be up to the players, it's gonna be up to the coaching staff to put the pen to paper and draw something, make something special out of this. And that's what we are hoping for in the coming months in preparations leading up to the regular season. So on to round 3, where the biggest supposed steal of the draft, and Nakobe Dean still sitting on the board, and he falls right into the Eagles' laps at 83. And fellas, I can't tell you enough how blessed of an opportunity Philly has to grab 2 of those Georgia Bulldogs from that championship team in the same class, and how well Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean work together when you understand what they did for the Bulldogs and what they could do to help out Jonathan Gannon and running his scheme to as proficient level as possible. I mean, there really isn't too much positivity that you can say what Nakobe Dean brings to the table. Now, competition wise and preparation wise, where are they going to exactly start him? Well, to me, I think it's going to be a competition of the Mike and Will linebacker, especially in your base defense. Whether they try a little bit of 3-4-4-3, 5-2, whatever the case may be. 5-2 is going to be different, obviously, because you got 2 stack backers. You can put them off the ball. You can put them on the ball. But what Nakobe Dean was really good at in Georgia was being a blitzer. And if you put him in packages where Jordan Davis is on the field containing bits of that offensive line and trying to draw 2 guys, and you got Javon Hargrave trying to get home, you got Hassan Reddick trying to get home, or you got Josh Sweat, whatever the case may be, I mean, it's almost a match made in heaven when you manage to get both of those guys and already know what makes each other click and how they can play to the best of their ability if you put them on the field together.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this right now. Unfortunately, everything I say is recorded and used against me in the court of Eagles opinion. But so people know I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna sit here and lie about it. I'd said over and over. I think me and Brandon probably argued about this off the show. I said over and over I wanted Devin Lloyd. I thought that he was the better of the 2. I thought he was the better linebacker. With that said, Nakobe Dean was my strong second. But I will agree with you. I think that his calling card, his flashiness comes from his blitzing, but let's not sleep on what he can do as far as seeing the field and being a pass coverage guy. He's not necessarily the guy that is going to make an off-time play in pass coverage, but he's going to be exactly where he needs to be.
Yes.
And even to that fact, even further to that fact of me saying, he was my number 2, a big thing for me was the talent that was around him. Obviously, it helped them win a championship, but to me, it's hard to say that a linebacker can go to the next level and do the same exact things. When you look at that Georgia defensive line, they got guys coming out next year that are going to be top 5. You know what I'm saying? Like they have defensive line that are defensive line on top of defense. Like they have a stacked defense. So there was never a time, I don't want to say never, but there was rarely a time that you saw a Nakobe Dean or a Quay Walker or a Channing Tindall have to really go through muck, right? You never really have to see them kind of sort through the garbage, as people like to say, right? So that was what concerned me with Nakobe Dean. Now, to that fact, you go from having Jordan Davis and all these dogs in front of you, Devontae Wyatt, to having Jordan Davis still in front of you, and now Javon Hargrave in front of you, now Fletcher Cox in front of you. So to say that, I feel like it kind of negates the things I was worried about. So I do feel off the rip, he's going to be our middle linebacker. I think that the mentality that he brings, would be a waste to just be a pass rusher. I really do feel like that. And I don't want to say that he's going to come out here and say he's going to be an amazing pass rusher his first year. But I think that him losing matchups, him getting beat, in the passing game is only going to make him better down the road. So I think that the Philadelphia Eagles would be wasting that pick and wasting his talent if they just looked at him as a pass rusher. But I agree. I think that Jonathan Gannon now has every single toy that he wanted. The cornerback room isn't the strongest on paper, right? The safety room isn't the strongest on paper, but now you have a lot of guys, you know what I'm saying? You can go as deep as we talk about Kayvon, we talk about Marcus Epps. You can go as deep as Jacoby Stevens, who me and Brandon have talked to. You can go as deep as Mac McCain. You can go as deep as you want. Yep. We don't really know what any of these guys are, so that works both ways, right? We don't know what's going to happen, and not only do we not know what these guys are, but when we were talking to Jacoby, one thing he was telling us, "Hey, yeah, I just came from a meeting with Nick Rallis, who's the linebacker coach." So even last year, you could see they were trying to instill a sense of versatility, a sense of just doing what we ask you to do. So I think we're going to be surprised with what we see, because I don't think we're going to be asking these players to be top guys. We're going to ask them to cover areas of the field and do their job. And I think that's what's going to get us further. You look at the Patriots defense, and I think that's what they do. They might not necessarily have the best players at every position, but every position understands what they're supposed to do. So if we can get that, I don't think we ever had that with Jim Schwartz. You know what I'm saying? I think it was everybody just, the front four just go. Right? Exactly. The front four go. Right. And the rest of you guys find somebody to cover. So I think that we actually, I'm hoping, I should say, because realistically, Jonathan Gannon didn't show me that this is going to happen, but this is what they keep saying, right? They keep saying that they want to be multiple. Now you have the players that you're allowing yourself to do that. So now it's on you. You got to go do it. So, I kind of lost what the whole point of the whole conversation was, but Nakobe Dean is going to be a dog, and he just plays into everything that I said. He has that versatility, and I think he could be the face of the transformation of what they're trying to do with this defense.
Nice. It's just that exciting, Castro, right?
I am.
Even though you wanted Devin Lloyd a little bit more.
How could you not be excited? I mean, there's other guys, I'm sorry to keep going, but we haven't done a show together, Brandon, in so long, so I know you're probably used to me just ranting and raving, but shout out to Samuel Rowe talking about, should we have taken Damone Clark? I like my linebackers to have use of their neck for this year. Hopefully, like Damone Clark might not play NFL again. Like that's what a lot of people on Twitter are putting up his numbers and everything. This man might not play football again. Like let's I just hate that people have the internet and they refuse to use it. That's just my only thing. But I loved him. I love Damone Clark play wise, but yeah, you got to know what you're talking. Anyways, go ahead, Brandon. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and bouncing this off to B, and understanding what Nakobe Dean brings to the table, and you bring up Jim Schwartz, Castro, and then bring this on to B. It almost reminds me that Dean has a skill set that can almost mimic what the responsibilities were when Malcolm Jenkins was an Eagle. He was a little bit everywhere. He played the safety spot. He had to be in coverage a little bit. He had to be a linebacker because of the limitations of the players around him, and then not playing up to scheme expectations. Now, you can't necessarily say that at this point in time, being that the personnel is a little more balanced to what Jonathan Gannon is looking to do, but I'm looking at this squad right now, and I'm seeing the potential in Nakobe Dean being the top competitor to a guy like TJ Edwards for that Mike linebacker position. Now, yes, granted, TJ's good for who he is, but we understand at that point in time, and him being an undrafted free agent, I believe, his ceiling's not going to be as high as Nakobe Dean's, obviously. But you know that in keeping this class going and watching what the Eagles did, they're trying to find that foundational piece in almost every single phase of that team that they possibly can. And you look at what Nakobe Dean can bring to the table. As bad as it looks for TJ Edwards, that's almost the fit that Nakobe needs to be in this defense. So, I mean, it's almost too attractive to not have Nakobe Dean and Kaiser White on the field at the same time as stack backers or whatever the case may be. So I mean, not saying that TJ is going to lose any opportunities here, but you got to put guys in positions where they're going to sometimes succeed better than somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to the draft, I mean, even when we had multiple first-round picks, I was slamming my fist on every time I watched Joe do a mock draft and he didn't take a linebacker, I would message him and be like, "Bro, once again, you didn't take a linebacker. Like, what's your problem?" Like, I was getting pissed off just watching his mock drafts. And obviously, it was either between Devin Lloyd and Nakobe Dean, and to even get a guy like this in the third round, not even just for obviously because we've been desperate to really get excited about our linebacker position, but that's a guy that the veterans can know that, okay, we're going to leave a leader for you guys, like someone that can actually take over. I feel like we haven't had that voice. I know we got Brandon Graham. He's a leader. Fletcher Cox, I feel like he is a leader, but I don't really see it like that, where maybe we lost that with the Malcolm Jenkins, like that leader, that person that was the voice that you would see a highlight to a huddle and it was his voice that just hyped you up sitting on your couch. Like, I think that's someone that Nakobe Dean is going to be. Even there's like a clip that was going around where it was like the guy next to him made the wrong play and tripped him up, and Nakobe Dean still made the play, but he got in his face. Yeah. Was like, "Yo, step your shit up." And now we got a guy like that, and that's something that we need. I feel like that's something that we've been missing. I like TJ Edwards. TJ Edwards, I think, has improved throughout the years since he's been with us. I know we were looking for someone to kind of replace that Nigel Bradham, that Michael Kendricks, and TJ and Edwards has been able to kind of step up in a sense, but has he stepped up enough to really earn that spot? I don't know. I mean, look who he was surrounded by. Like, let's be real. He was surrounded by I already forget his name. That Nate Gary. Like, he was surrounded by guys like Nate
White
Gary.
Snake.
Yeah, the White Mamba apparently. But
Alex Singleton, yeah.
He was surrounded by just guys, special team guys that unfortunately we needed to go ahead and play starters. And it was unfortunate. And I mean, TJ Edwards has looked good, but now we're getting guys. We're signing guys off free agency. We're drafting a first round talent that fell to the third for God knows what. And we got him there, and people were saying that he could be the next big thing. So
yeah,
today it was nice that you were there. Maybe you'll be a depth piece at this time, but it's definitely something that we are blessed that we're able to have, especially with these older guys like a Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, our leaders that are not going to be there in the future. I mean, Brandon Graham's coming off an Achilles injury. How many seasons? Well, I thought he was done like 2 seasons ago. Like, this is probably going to be his farewell tour, to be honest. We're going to lose some key players next year. It's going to be sad, but we needed those leaders, and the Nakobe Dean, man, the fact that he fell to us, I can't complain.
I will say one thing. Like, if you can't coach a position, you damn well better go get some talent. And I think that we learned that with the wide receiving position, and now we're going to go get talent because we just realized we're not doing it. We're just not doing it. We did it with the safety position, a couple years in a row, being able to get a Malcolm Jenkins, being able to kind of keep things afloat with him, and then kind of putting next to him Rodney McLeod. That was a nice duo for a while. We obviously did it with the cornerback position, right? Getting Steven Nelson and now it's about time that we did it for the linebacking position, and I think that they did that. So that's something to be excited
about. When was the last time we've had a homegrown defensive back, like you just said? I mean, we had Jalen Mills, who we thought all right, maybe he was going to do something, but then he turned out to he just was another piece. Everyone else has been Ronald Darby's free agency, Jenkins free agency, McLeod free agency. Darius Slay, free agency. Steven Nelson's free agency. Like we haven't drafted and built a homegrown. But I feel like the last great person, obviously, is Hall of Famer Brian Dawkins. I mean, let's be real. Like, who else since then has really, since Brian Dawkins left or we let go to the Broncos, has really been a homegrown talent that we've had on this team to be with us for throughout the time.
Birdman 951 in the building. Man, already approaching an hour. Where's the time going? We got we got two more picks to get to and try and wrap it up with the schedule and how this is all going to come together. But and to Nick Rallis's defense, as one of the most youthful on the coaching staff and being as old as some of these guys on the roster, like 27, 28 years old, to his defense, he didn't have much of a personnel group to work with in that linebacking core. If we're being real here, but at the same time, there's still that level of accountability, but sometimes it's the personnel that that improves the coach, that improves the coaching, and vice versa. And that's where a guy like Nakobe Dean comes in, where he's going to be your now foundational piece and trying to build around what makes Nakobe good. Okay, well, now what kind of linebackers can we bring in to support him? Much like you take it from a mentality of the quarterback. Well, who's going to be the best for Jalen Hurts? And that's what led to the trade for AJ Brown, to which all it took was a pick swap and a third to get him. That's just unbelievable value. But you're taking advantage of a team that doesn't like to pay their wide receivers. That's not our fault. Credit to Howie for getting that done. But and another notable linebacker that I did want to leave out too, that resembles a lot of what Nakobe Dean does, is Jordan Hicks. Jordan Hicks was another undersized linebacker and had some injury concerns coming out of Texas, but he was a very well thought out commander for that linebacking core, between the first and the second level. And if you don't have that kind of chemistry between the first and the second level, then that's where the secondary and the third is going to start to they're going to suffer. You're going to exploit them to a lot more defensive breakdowns, and that's why we have suffered quite a lot over the last couple of seasons, is that we just didn't have the talent that was up to par, between the defensive line and the linebackers to really kind of blanket some of the weaknesses in the secondary that we're still concerned about with the lack of depth. And I think that was one of the biggest approaches going into this draft class as to why we didn't see a selection, a draftable corner or a draftable safety, and we may need to go to the waiver wire or free agency, whatever the case may be. But let's wrap it up a little bit quicker here, being that I have no idea what your time flexibility is, gentlemen, but we're going to try and wrap this along a little bit quicker. Kyron Johnson out of Kansas, one of the 6th round selections. Another guy that's a very viable depth piece. He is, he's explosive. He's more, he's a little more. He's more of one of those guys that's sideline to sideline. He's got that speed for that kind of coverage. And he fits the mold on what the Eagles were trying to do with a Patrick Johnson and Teron Jackson, and then you add Hassan Reddick into the fold, and you're trying to take advantage of the theme of athleticism. Athleticism, explosiveness, and he's going to be another, viable depth piece to add to the linebacker / pass rushing core, much like they tried to do with Davion Taylor a couple of years ago. And unfortunately, as of right now, he's not in the healthiest of shape. So, I think this is more of a security selection to add to that depth and to, and keep feeding Gannon the personnel he needs to run his scheme.
Yeah, I like Kyron Johnson. I keep hearing that they're probably going to be using him more as just like mainly as a pass rusher as of right now. We'll see if that, once you get to these rounds, you're kind of like taking throwing darts, right? You're just hoping that one of these guys can make an impact on your team. So I think that he's a good player, very underrated as a athlete goes. I think that he's very, very athletic, undersized. I mean, nothing too crazy about him, but nothing like bad about him. I'm not upset about the pick. Like you said, it's a good insurance pick. We'll see if anything really pops off with him. I don't trust Tracy Rocker, but we'll see what happens. I hope that Tracy Rocker is not having one-on-one meetings with him because Tracy Rocker ruined our defensive line last year. But anyways,
man.
Stop it. Tracy Rocker wasn't having Fletcher Cox cover screen passes. That's not Tracy. That was Gannon.
No, that's facts.
But I mean, I don't have anything extensive on this pick. Unfortunately for me, I feel like this one kind of went by the wayside. And to me, in a sense, like I just haven't after Nakobe Dean, and then obviously we'll talk about the pick after this. It just, I don't know, it just kind of fell by the wayside, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It felt like a pick that, like, how he makes those picks where the fan base is clamoring like, oh, you don't think I'll take a running back early or something like that? And this one was like, well, I'm going to take another linebacker to make everyone happy. So the people know, like, oh, I value linebacker too. And I'm glad you brought up Davion Taylor because, I mean, if he can stay healthy, if this linebacking core can stay healthy, the people that we could have a decent linebacking core. I mean, Davion Taylor showed flashes of being able to get sideline to sideline and be a guy that maybe we could have as a starter. Unfortunately, like you said, he just kept getting hurt. And maybe that's him, and that's just an unfortunate aspect, and we're going to lose out on like such an athletic guy. Or we already knew that he was a guy that needed to develop, someone that was a project player that you were going to have to develop and really getting him for his athleticism. If he can stay healthy, I mean, our linebacking core right now after this draft and after the free agency looks really good. I mean, that's all I really got to say about that.
Yeah, and I think that's why I meshed him in with guys like Patrick Johnson and Teron Jackson, because if you look at it from afar, you understand that especially linebacker and wide receiver, those are two skill positions that have a lot of not depth. They have a lot of bodies. They have a lot of competition that is going to happen, come OTAs and come training camp to really try and wean out, who's going to make it and who isn't. And that's where a guy like Kyron Johnson falls into that category. I think he can provide a little bit more than maybe a Teron Jackson, more so than a Patrick Johnson, because Patrick's more of a he's more of an edge, more of a pass rusher. He's got a bit of a bigger build than Kyron, who's undersized, but we kind of get the idea on where they're going with a guy like Kyron Johnson. But yeah, as you said, this wasn't, this was kind of the pick, like, yeah, okay, more, like kind of how Cam Jurgens was in the second round. That's what it kind of mimicked to me. But the sixth round after that is where my intrigue starts to pick up a little bit. And, they take a tight end and Grant Calcaterra. Like, wait a minute. Okay, well, you start to get that. All right, he played with Jalen Hurts at Oklahoma back in 2019. He was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. And, really one of the only things that set him back was, having multiple concussions. He had to step away for a little bit. He became a firefighter, EMT. He comes back to football and, becomes one of the top targets for SMU and really displays a very good fit if you're going to put him at TE2 next to Dallas Goedert, where you're going to use, in those instances, if you're running 12 personnel, there's going to be a lot of times that, you may switch it up a little bit and you're going to try and confuse the defense, and you're going to keep Goddard back in more of a pass, in more of a blocking type of scheme, and then especially in red zone situations where Grant has shown a lot of his skill set, you put him on any kind of route that stretches the field, whether it's up the seam or across, or stuff that he was very proficient at, and you add that kind of 1-2 punch like we did a little bit of a resemblance with Zach Ertz and Goddard coming up through the ranks. Okay, now we got something here here that this may be another strong late pick kind of value, the way, not to the degree of Nakobe Dean, who fell unexpectedly the way he did, but Calcaterra back, in 2019, he was supposed to be one of the next top tight ends until his concussions, and now because of that, him falling to the sixth, I think the Eagles got some pretty good value here, considering that Richard Rodgers is still here for the moment. Jack Stoll was undrafted. He's been a good story so far, but I don't think he's of the talent level of Grant. And Tyree Jackson, unfortunately, can't stay healthy. So I think there's a lot of opportunity here for a guy like Grant Calcaterra, and the sky's the limit if he's willing to take it.
Yeah, I like Grant. I like Grant Calcaterra. I like his name. It's a cool last name. He honestly. He reminds me so much, and I said this like when we did draft. He reminds me so much of Zach Ertz, and it's not like he's probably a little bit better after the catch, because I think everybody's a little bit better than after the catch than Zach Ertz, if we're being 100% honest.
Zach.
But seriously, but I like what you nailed it on the head. I think that this could be a perfect type of guy that matches with what Dallas Goedert is good at. I want to see him block better. I want to see him be more of an inline type guy, maybe put on a little bit more weight, but that might negate the pass catcher that he is, because he is a good route runner as well. He's a guy that's going to get open. You know what I'm saying? Yep. What he does with it afterward, who knows? He's not going to run 50, 60 yards after the catch, but he's going to get open. He's a very solid option in the pass game, as you said. I'm not too afraid of him being like, maybe this is me being biased because we had him on the show, but I like Jack Stoll. I think that what Jack Stoll brings to this team is what the Eagles need. I think that if we can take away Dallas Goedert's need to actually be a blocker, I think that just opens up our offense even more. And unfortunately, Dallas Goedert is one of the better blocking tight ends in the league, not just on our team. So it's hard to replace that. But I think that Jack Stoll, he kind of is just a blocker. Not to hate on him. I don't think he offers too much in the way of a pass catcher, but he can obviously catch some balls. He caught some last year, but I think his main thing is to be a pass blocker or run blocker. So I think that if you can take that off of Dallas Goedert's plate a little bit, then cool. But I like Grant Calcaterra. I like them all. There's a lot of talent in this tight end room, if we're being 100% honest. It's like pick your poison. Well, it just comes down, what do you want? Because Tyree Jackson gives you that Kyle Pitts type vibe, right? We don't forget, we got the best blocker in the league when it comes to wide receivers now, move to tight end. So J-Jaw might come in there and really make something happen. He's fun to play with on
I didn't mention him again. What is wrong with me? I did not mention J-Jaw again. Oh, hey, B's gonna.
Yo,
J-Jaw gets J-Jaw off this. If Grant Calcaterra can get J-Jaw off of this team, I will personally make a statue for Grant Calcaterra.
I'll tell you what. Since I forgot about Arcega-Whiteside, unfortunately, since B's on the panel here, I wasn't supposed to. But when I watched the selection of Grant, I thought, okay, wait a minute. Part of him reminds me of the Eagles looking for a player, granted at a different position, but they were looking for a guy that they were hoping Arcega-Whiteside was going to provide, that unfortunately he hasn't to this point. A big, a red zone target, somebody that's not afraid to go up and snatch the football, that basketball type of vibe where you're the one being aggressive for the rebound. Arcega-Whiteside was a basketball player, but that's what Calcaterra brings to the table at the tight end position. And that's one of the first things that I thought when they selected him. But when you look at the big picture with the offense as a whole, and what they're doing for Jalen Hurts that we haven't necessarily seen when the old number 11 was under center for the Eagles. What they're doing for Jalen Hurts is they're getting people around him, especially playmakers and pass catchers that he's pretty familiar with. A.J. Brown being his best friend, Devontae Smith being a former teammate in Alabama. Now you add Grant Calcaterra into the mix if you want to run some of that 12 personnel and have him run out there on a route and try and catch a pass from Hurts. This is starting to become a better test to see what Hurts is capable of. But you have to admit at the same time that, okay, well, part of it is maybe the organization likes Hurts. Well, it's probably obvious to this point that they like Hurts more than they did Carson. But that's a part of taking advantage of a player that you don't necessarily need to pay right away, and you're able to make these kinds of moves, especially to make him happy with players that he personally knows that'll help him on the field at the same time.
No, yeah, I agree. And that was kind of like the point I was going to go with this pick, and why it kind of intrigued me and had me forgetting about the last pick was that, I mean, Joe said it, our tight end room, there's just so much going on that it's literally outside of Dallas Goedert, it's anybody. It's like you can all fight for that tight end 2 spot, even J Jaw. I mean, J Jaw has an opportunity to see the field, and I mean, it might be a knock on him, but at the same time, if he can get on the field and he's actually productive, then hey, maybe that's all it took was just changing positions and being covered by linebackers and safeties rather than corners. I mean, maybe he's just too slow for that, but it just shows that they're all in on Jalen Hurts. Like you just brought up, like they weren't getting those kind of guys for Carson. No offense, but we're not going to go ahead and just stack up on South Dakota guys. Unlike Jalen was playing in the SEC, he was playing at Oklahoma, Alabama. Like we ain't going to go stack up on South Dakota players for Carson Wentz. The only person that we could have maybe grabbed and drafted was Cooper Kupp, because I believe they had the same agent, and I think that was a guy that Carson liked, and that I was during that time frame, I was like, oh, maybe we should go get Cooper Kupp, and that could be a solid pick right there. Obviously, we didn't, but that's the only player that I could think of that might have been like a Carson Wentz connection. Other than that, he didn't really have connections. He still really doesn't. I know he gets buddy on Instagram, but it's like as soon as he leaves the teams, they don't talk about him anymore. So fortunately, these guys like Jalen Hurts for better or worse, and this is his chance. This is the organization, like you just said, showing Jalen, like, we believe in you for this time. I mean, let's say Jalen does kill it. Now he has the opportunity to re-sign, and maybe if we're lucky, we're able to say, listen, we got the guys around you. We want to keep building this team. I know you want your money, but let's work something out that helps everybody, because we're making these moves to make you feel comfortable, to make you be the best that you can be, and getting like an AJ Brown, who may not be getting paid giant money this season and next season, but after that, he's going to be getting paid. Yeah. And so we're going to have to work a way to, if Jalen Hurts is that dude, to work his contract to kind of balance that out in order to make sure that the rest of the team is doing well too. And if he's not that guy, then obviously we can get a young dude and not have to pay them and keep continuing to build this team. But I just liked how this guy was playing with Jalen Hurts in college for a little bit. The only thing that makes me nervous, and it was kind of me thinking as you guys were talking, is the concussions, is that first real NFL hit, that welcome to the NFL. Yeah. Is that going to make him nervous? Is that going to, he ends up getting hit weird and he's like, maybe this isn't for me. That's the only thing that can make me nervous about him. But then again, it's a win-win. I mean, it's low risk, high reward type of pick. Obviously, it's at the end of the draft. Yep. We didn't grab him in the second round saying, oh, this is Jalen Hurts, boy, we're going to get tight end in the second round. It was our last pick in the draft, and we ended up getting this guy, and he could potentially be something special for us to balance out Dallas Goedert. So that's what I got excited about this pick.
Imagine what a second-round tight end would have said to a guy like Dallas Goedert in the first place, much like Zach Ertz went through the same thing when Dallas was selected in the second round. Imagine that after him getting the bag. But no, and bringing up the receiver core here, AJ Brown was only offered about $16 million a year with $4 in incentives by the Tennessee Titans, and he came and flat out said that I would have taken $22 million, and still the Eagles gave him more than he initially thought he was going to get because of that belief, because of that collection, the connection to Jalen Hurts, but more importantly, because of the fit, a perfect fit of what A.J. Brown brings to the Philadelphia Eagles as that true number one X receiver, where you can finally give Devontae Smith some breathing room, move him over to the Z, and most importantly, you're not going to have necessarily the number one corner on the opposing defense shadow a guy like Devontae Smith, where he's going to now have to worry about A.J. Brown beating him snap in and snap out. That's going to just open the door for Quez Watkins or Zach Pascal, and you just keep going down the depth chart of, different formations on what you want to do, different personnel that you have on the field. Now you have to take A.J. Brown into consideration. It's going to be a little more difficult for defenses to scheme. But at the end of the day, when we look at it as a crux, this team is only going to go as far as Jalen Hurts takes them. At the end of the day, simply put, we understand his strengths, we understand his weaknesses, and right now the fan base is, blowing up the weaknesses more than the strengths because they're a lot more apparent, especially with him throwing the football. And understanding all the moves that the Eagles have done up to this point in free agency and the draft, it's telling you flat out with who they targeted, with who they targeted in free agency and Calvin Ridley, they had some interest in Christian Kirk, I believe. They had some interest in a couple of the receivers that I can't remember off the top of my head, but nonetheless, the Eagles are telling you right then and there that they're looking to throw the football a little bit more. They're not going to try and feel as, run first centric, especially with the questions with Miles Sanders, if he can maintain, a healthy season of more than 12 games. But nonetheless, this is the ultimate test for Jalen Hurts as the quarterback of this football team. And that's where the investment just, elevates the priority in them looking for that franchise guy. I mean, you can't spell it out any more obvious than what we have seen in the last month or so.
Yeah, I think this whole team is under a lot of pressure. You get better, there's more expectation. So this is what they wanted. You know what I'm saying? You want to have the best opportunity possible, and the Philadelphia Eagles, they got that. So don't piss me off, Philly. Don't piss me off.
Right. I agree. I mean, Jalen Hurts is definitely under pressure, but I also feel like outside of Jalen Hurts, it's that defensive front seven. Are we going to be able to get pressure on these quarterbacks? Because we can score 32 points, but if other scores 35 and their quarterback's going 29 for 32. What are we going to do? Like, there's nothing we're going to be able to do. And it's going to come down to that front seven, because we're not going to, unless some miracles happen and we end up having some great undrafted rookies, or McPherson turns out to be a solid number 2, we're not going to have studs outside of Darius Slay in the defensive back room. So we're going to need our front seven to really step up, to be able to put pressure on the quarterback, be able to hold down the run, and really hold these teams to about 20 to 24 points a game, so that if it does come out to like that kind of a shootout where we need to score 28-30, then we can be like, all right, that's on the offense. Like, the offense does need to be able to score too. But if our defense isn't going to be able to stop nobody, then I don't care how good Jalen Hurts looks, we're not going to win anything. So, like Joe said, it's going to come down to the team. We pretty much improved all around the board, except for like the defensive backs, but that can be supplemented with a great pass rush and a front seven.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of direct, there's a lot of direct contextual considerations that you have to bring to light, to the fact that, ever since I think high school, Hurts has not been in the same, in the same kind of offensive system, and now he can finally benefit from that. And what do you do on top of that benefit? You continue to add weaponry around him that'll not only help him improve, but it'll also help Sirianni improve in terms of a play caller, with him being able to open up the book a little bit more and have a better collaboration with Shane Steichen, the offensive coordinator, and then it just goes even further down the board. Maybe this is going to open up the run game a little more, where we're not overly dependent on Miles Sanders, giving us the extra yardage, and that's another conversation for another day, just because of the fact. But and I almost forgot about the Calcaterra concussion issue and everything. And let us remember, a few years ago at some point, the Eagle, a lot of guys in the fan base have wanted Brandon Cooks for quite a long time, and him being on and off of the trade block, and he has shared some of those concussion problems himself as well. And yeah, while it's kind of alarming, I think it's just going to ultimately depend on how they use Grant, and not subject him to as much of those risks as often as possible. I mean, maybe they're going to depend on the receivers a lot more now that you have an AJ Brown paired with a Devontae Smith. And you can mix a guy like Quez Watkins a little bit in there at the Y, and just send him straight down the field, and use his speed to your advantage, situations like that. But yeah, no, this is one of the most intriguing Eagles off seasons that I have seen in quite a long time across the board. When it comes to the players that we brought in, when it comes to the schedule and having 5 primetime games, the teams that we play, the old number 11 comes to the link, Doug Peterson comes to the link.
Back to back.
We face Frank Reich. We face him in Indianapolis. There's going to be a lot of hype around this football team, and I can't wait to just get into the regular season and see what this team has to offer. But like I said, to put a bow on it, at the end of the day, they have to put pen to paper with this. As good as this draft has looked, and as good as the free agency has looked, to a fault, it wasn't as exciting as the draft was, but as good as it has looked overall so far for Howie Roseman, now you have to build on that sense of success in deploying these players properly, to put us in a better position to consistently make the playoffs, or even have a better record in the regular season, be division champs once again, and not have to fight with the Dallas Cowboys as often as we have had for the last few years. But to close it up, God, having to use that as a handkerchief more often than I should. Stupid allergies. But in looking at the schedule quick, and I didn't want to really reflect on the schedule all that much, because it is very early to evaluate it. You're not going to know how these teams are going to look in the regular season, especially on when you face these specific teams. For example, week 1 we have to go to Detroit to face the Lions. Minnesota Vikings we get early, who are going to be running a different offense, a different defense, with Mike Zimmer not being there anymore. They got some different players, and those are the kind of teams that you're going to want to get early, because they're still in their developmental phases of figuring out a new scheme, and how they're going to deploy their players and whatnot. But when you look across the scape of the schedule here, and the teams that we are facing, and realizing that, well, there's really only one elite quarterback that the Eagles are going to face, and we play the Green Bay Packers again. The Titans are up there with King Henry, not so much Ryan Tannehill, as we know. The Steelers, who knows who their quarterback is going to be between Trubisky or Kenny Pickett. The Houston Texans, not much there. But across the board, if you look at the team itself and not the schedule, I'm thinking, in my opinion, if we want to have a success here, we need to do better than last year. And I say the ceiling for them to show of it being a success is 11 games, 10 to 11 wins. I think it's fair. I think it's enough to win the division. But if you want to say that it was an overall success, they got to do better than last year's record. But they have to do it consistently, and not having to switch their switch their scheme up halfway into the year when, at the sacrifice of losing players. So what were your guys' initial thoughts when you seen the schedule and what you thought your way early record prediction was going to be?
17-0. 17-0, baby. 17-0. 17-0 until we lose. Not. I think that we have a really easy schedule. I've said before. I think our floor should be like 10 wins. If I'm being 100%, I don't see more than 10. I don't see more than 7, maybe 8 teams, depending on how much you're in love with like what Washington did. That like I really feel like we are going to go on some type of win streak. But with that said, I don't believe that is going to be indicative of how good we are. I think it's more indicative of how bad our schedule might be. But like you said, we don't know what's going to happen from here till the end of August, early September. So anything can happen. Detroit Lions could bring Joe Montana and Barry Sanders back. Who knows, right? You never know. They might find something that clicks and they're a totally different team than last year. So right now, it's very early, but I do think that our floor should be around 9 to 10 wins. If we do anything less than that, I don't want to put a number on success, but if we do anything less than that, I'm gonna be a little bit upset. But there's a lot of forms of success that we'll probably see or not see in this season. Yeah. So I'm excited for it. I think we got a pretty good road ahead.
Correct. I think that beginning of the schedule, we have to win those games. At least the first. I would like to go 4-0 in the beginning of the season, just so you start off that first quarter fresh. I mean, like you said, to us fans seeing Detroit in the opening, that's like, that's an automatic win, but that could easily be a trap game because we destroyed them last year, and they could have that extra animosity to at least want to beat us before going on some kind of bad streak or something. Or for all we know, maybe the people that they've gotten is going to benefit them. But I think they drafted the Alabama wide receiver, right? That's probably not going to be playing for a minute anyways.
Jameson Williams was it was even miserable when he first got his jersey at the introductory conference.
So fortunately for us,
see the look on his face. He did not want to be there.
So fortunately for us, we don't have to deal with that right away. So hopefully, like you said, that beginning of the season jitters. But for us, I feel like that's a key moment for us to really settle in and kind of. I mean, outside of like last year when we beat Atlanta, but continue that, not just beat Atlanta, look great, get our hopes high. And then the only reason why we made the playoffs is because they added an extra spot. If they didn't add that extra spot, we would have been sitting home and not saying anything about the playoffs or saying that at least Hurts got to play a playoff game. So I think we do need to play well and win those first 4 games, win that first quarter. And then, I mean, like you said, I mean, it's hard not to be optimistic with this schedule. On paper, you're looking at it, you're like, damn. Like, if we have anything less than even 11 wins, it's going to be like, what's our future? I feel like if we're under 10 wins, you're not going to see Jalen next year. We're not going to see him because, I mean, fortunately for us, I mean, even compared to like the Jets have a harder schedule than we do. And I feel bad because they stunk for so long. So it's just that we have to take advantage of what's in front of us. Like Joe said, it might not mean that if we do get 11, 12 wins that we're like this really good team. It could just be because of the schedule. But let it be that. I'd rather be that and be excited all season and cheering this team on than getting through a schedule like this and underperforming, because that would be absolutely miserable to then know that we're underperforming and then our OGs are leaving, either most of them the following year or the year after that. So that would just be mad depressing and something I would not want to see. So I'm going to stay optimistic and say this is going to be like an early prediction 12-win season.
I mean, even before I seen the schedule, and regardless of the rumors, and now seeing that we still have to put a grain of salt on this, because strength of schedule sometimes is a bunch of crap, because that's based off of the record. That's based off of the team's records from last year. You can't translate that to this year, because every team gets better in some capacity. So strength of schedule, I don't pay much attention to it, because I'm too focused on my own team's expectations. But the Eagles have the 3rd easiest strength of schedule, based on that kind of criteria. But nonetheless, even before I seen the team's schedule, I thought to myself that, well, to to have a not much of a bounce back, but to take that for this team to take that next step, they obviously have to be better than what they were last year and on a more consistent basis and not having to tailor make the run game to help benefit what Jalen Hurts does good instead of blanketing his weaknesses like they had to in that like they had to against Detroit. Like Detroit was one of the first teams that that they just really destroyed in terms of the run game for over 200 yards. And absolutely ECG, yeah, it is just a gauge. Nobody takes it all. I'm just saying in terms of strength of schedule. I mean, like I said, you take it with a grain of salt and whatnot.
Right.
But in terms of Ryan Tannehill, I don't think it's the fact that people are down on him. I think it's to me, I think it's the fact that when you put him in that Tennessee offense with a guy like Derrick Henry, who is as hard to stop as he is and as destructive of a runner as he is, the whole point of that is that you're not. The more you ask Tannehill to pass on a consistent basis, the more he starts to break down, and that was what led to the Dolphins' decision and moving on for him because he just wasn't good enough in that regard. And when you limit the amount of times that he has to pass, that's when he starts to look better. So I don't think it's necessarily being down on him. It's just taking Tannehill for what he is, and he's just a quarterback that needs to rely on that he needs to rely on an elite run game to get him going. You got to call it you got to call a spade when you're talking about Derrick Henry because he really didn't have much of that with the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah,
So I think that's where it comes from.
I think we have all seen Tannehill's ceiling. Like, I mean, the guy is not like he's been on the scene the last only 2 years. Like you said, he had a whole other life in Miami, and I'm pretty sure during that time frame he had both a young Parker and Jarvis Landry. I mean, that's probably a better duo than he had in Tennessee, and they still get the food. So, I mean, obviously we're not going to keep talking about Ryan Tannehill, but he's just the guy. He's just the guy that he'll get you the plays that you may need, but that could also have been because of the guy that we have now, the AJ Brown breaking tackles and being able to take a slant to the house. So we'll really see if they think that Treylon Burks is going to be that guy. I mean, I was high on Treylon Burks, but now that he's not with us, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be bad if he was going to the Titans. It doesn't hurt us in a sense unless we play him in a Super Bowl. So, well, actually, December 12th we play them, so maybe he won't be a good that game. So,
yeah. Well, fellas, I think I have to say that I feel I've overstayed my welcome with having you two on the panel because I've honestly had no idea how long I was going to be able to keep you two, and I think we covered a pretty good amount in terms of breaking down the draft selections and what they mean for their skill positions on this football team and what they need to do in order to help themselves as a whole to take that next step in being a more consistent football team and talking a little bit about Jalen Hurts because again I didn't want to regurgitate some of the same conversations here because we all know at this point what we're looking for. Right. But regardless, being that this is the first time for having you two on my channel, I needed the both of your takes, with following Castro over on his platform over there. You two doing a great job. But regardless, I needed to hear from you two. It's been overdue. It's been a long time, but I appreciate the time that you guys have devoted to, into making the stream what it was. So I appreciate you guys.
Oh yeah, our pleasure, man.
But yeah, with that being said, it's already been an hour and a half, and time flies when you're having fun, especially when talking to Philadelphia Eagles, as we have known for the longest in having our channels. But I think that is going to put a bow on episode 14 of Touchdown Talk. Joe Castro making his official appearance, bringing on Shakey B and Brandon Jordan over on this episode of Touchdown Talk. Thank you guys once again. And as for myself and Lindy, well, what am I doing? Make sure y'all hop over to Philly the podcast and give the necessary support that Castro so deserves in keeping his channel alive and strong to this point. I think approaching 3,500 subscribers, and me personally being a part of the journey and watching you grow how you have, and it's just good to be around a humble community of human beings, because us humans, we are born in this, to be a human being to one another, and the easiest way I can say that is just through love. And it's funny how loving the same football team can bring a community together the way it has. So it's been good to getting to know the two of you through call-ins and whatnot, and to finally have you on the channel. So yeah, with that said, make sure everybody gives the necessary support and checks out Philly the podcast's channel. Thank you guys once again. But with that said, this has been Lindy Endzone for episode 14 of Touchdown Talk. Episode 15 premieres tomorrow, so be sure to tune into that one as well. But with that said, we will see you guys later. Fly Eagles fly, bleed green. Take care of yourselves, everyone. See you soon, and have a good night.